Francine on Blue Sky asked, what is the distribution of aerosol sizes during talking, breathing, singing, and exercising? Are there just more aerosols being generated during one activity than another, or do these also differ in size? Excellent question. All right, since we're talking about size, let's bring up our log scale. And for context, here are the size ranges for some things that you may be familiar with. For example, hair is typically around 100 microns, while spider web is around 1 micron. And shown here is the typical size distribution of exhaled aerosol when a person is talking. Now, when you look at the size distribution, it doesn't seem to have a simple log normal distribution, but rather it has an unusual bump on the side. The reason for this is because there are two distinct ways in which exhaled aerosol is produced when a person is talking. One way is the aerosol is produced just by breathing, and the other is aerosol is produced in a completely different way when people talk and sing. Okay then, how are they different? Well, let's first discuss how aerosol is produced when we breathe. In order to breathe, your diaphragm will contract. This increases the volume in your chest, causing an inhalation. The diaphragm then expands, decreasing the volume in the lungs, leading to an exhalation. This cycle then repeats. To understand how this produces aerosol, you need to think about what's happening in the tiny airways in the deep lung. Immediately prior to inhalation, the airway surfaces get close to each other. This can lead to the formation of a plug of respiratory fluid. During inhalation, as the airway expands, the plug stretches out and filaments of respiratory filament are made. As this airway fully opens, the plug is completely broken down, which leads to the aerosol droplets being ejected. This aerosol is then exhaled. Because the aerosol droplets are produced during inhalation, a fraction of them will be deposited back into the lungs during exhalation. The reason for this is that that is what aerosol does when it's in the lungs. I've discussed how aerosol deposits in the lungs in a previous video, link in the description. The longer an aerosol spends in the lungs, the more likely it is to deposit. What this means is that by briefly holding your breath during inhalation, you can physically lower the amount of aerosol that you exhale. With every breath, we exhale about 500 milliliters of air in about 1.5 seconds. All of this air passes through the larger airways at a tremendous speed. The sheer forces of turbulent flow will cause aerosol to be produced in the upper airways. All right, so these are the two main mechanisms of aerosol generation produced by breathing. When you exercise, these processes simply happen more often, which leads to a higher particle number being exhaled. The size distribution of the aerosol between resting and exercising are largely the same. Now then, what about talking and singing? The first thing you may notice is that when you look at the size distribution of exhaled aerosol, is that the size of aerosol due to talking and singing is slightly larger than those from breathing. The reason for this is that when you talk and sing, aerosol is produced in a completely different mechanism in a completely different region of the respiratory system. As mentioned, aerosols produced by breathing is generated in the deep lung, while aerosol produced by talking and singing originates in the larynx. When we talk and sing, our vocal cords open and close. The physical contact between the cords opening and closing causes the aerosol to form in a similar fashion as those in the deep lung. Additionally, the vibration of the vocal cords will cause the aerosol to be ejected. This violent shaking will result in larger aerosol being produced. So the amount of aerosol produced when you talk and sing is correlated with how loud a person is speaking. So getting back to the original question, the size distribution of exhaled aerosol during talking and breathing are different, and there are mechanistic reasons for this. Along with size and numbers, given the aerosols produced in different regions in the respiratory system, the composition of the aerosol will be different as well.